going on, guys? Today we have another mashup of these two Hot Wheels cars. And the first one is this Mustang Shelby GT500, and the other is this Corvette Grand Sport. I gotta figure out how to put these guys together. Let's get them apart. Right, I did something a bit different this time. I usually don't plan out my builds, but I drew a picture here. And I drew two different options, one with each of the starting cars as the base. And I'm going to go with this bottom drawing here, but we're going to need to build some kind of roof. What it also means is we're going to need to take apart this Mustang pretty extensively. Well, you don't see that every day. Let's get to chopping. Now I'm fitting the Mustang interior into this Corvette, and I'm grabbing this Mustang's windshield glass as well. Mustang fans, look away, because this is really going to hurt. Why do I always break the blade right at the end? Subscribe. Alrighty, so I got these two sides of the car, and my idea was to have these coming kind of offset from the side here, you can see. Like armor panels. You'll see why in a second, but I want to remove these pillars. And I want it to look kind of, broken off, so I will break them off. It might be hard to tell because it's still silver, but I went ahead and used my normal paint stripper to take the paint off of the Corvette. For the parts from the Mustang, I'm going to use something different. This is just some nail polish remover in a little jar. This stuff does really well if the paint has been disturbed by either sanding or cutting. So these pieces obviously were cut. And you can see this roof, just all the paint came off in one go. Still needed a bit more cleaning up though. Now it's on to the star of the show and the whole reason for this idea to come to pass. If you noticed, in this drawing there's some tracks, like tank treads. And I got the idea to use this corrugated plastic signboard. Basically what I'm doing is cutting off a strip. I think this is about 6 millimeters wide. And then cutting down the corrugations. So basically splitting it in the middle as close to the middle as possible. And what that'll give us is, if you ever look at some tracks, they have these little protrusions coming out. And rather than gluing those on one by one, which was my first idea, this is already done for me. I just need to wrap it around some wheels. And anyone that customizes die-cast cars definitely understands the amount of stock wheels that you end up having. So I taped these together just to kind of mock up where I want them to go. It took me quite a while to figure out how I wanted these tracks to sit. But I ended up removing some of the casting here. Oh yeah, alright. I also filed down a little groove in the top here and put the roof of the Mustang on top. Fits really well. I do want to remove this other little piece in the back here. I'm not really sure what you'd call this. It's behind the driver's side headrest. First, basically, I'm going to fill that with some baking soda superglue mix, just to fill in that hole, and I will cut it off with the jeweler's saw. I figured it would be easier to fill this hole before cutting than to try to fill the void after. I went a little bit too rough on sanding at first. I wish I had started with a finer file. Anyways, it was on to picking the tires, the wheels that were going to go inside of the treads. It was really important to me to pick something that was symmetrical. So you can see I'm mocking up kind of where I want the tread to sit. I found these smaller wheels that are all the same, with a couple slightly larger wheels for the front and the rear. This was a real pain to try to visualize. So my first idea was to clip the axles and stick them into the sanding mesh as a kind of guide or positioning jig. And that kind of worked. Everything was a bit wobbly, and the reason I wanted a jig is because I want to use these paper clips to solder a kind of frame, and everything was moving around way too much, so I ended up drawing out the same configuration on a little block of wood. This is just a block of pine from the home center. Some offcut of home improvement project. But that allowed me to kind of skewer in these paper clips, set down my frame and solder directly on top of this piece of wood. Everything was real nice and solid. And the good thing about these paper clips is that they're the same diameter as a Hot Wheel axle, so I can just push the wheels right on. They're a little bit bigger, but these wheels don't need to roll. There we go. Both sides together. This is kind of what they'll look like after they get the treads on. And as luck would have it, these little brass, I think they're brass, they're like tubular beads. They fit right over the paper clips. There was a little bit of play, so I had to mess with the angle a bit, but it allowed me to connect them together, not only to mock it up, but also when I went to solder things together. I could solder the metal bead to the paperclip really easily. Now it was time to get the base of the car fit together with everything else. I had to make a little groove to glue the base of the car onto that wire frame that I made. And oh my goodness, I thought I had a great idea with these treads. I think this plastic signboard is made out of like some kind of polypropylene or really annoying to glue plastic. What ended up working was using these metal tweezers as a kind of iron and then heating them up after clamping the plastic to itself. I used a soldering iron to heat up those tweezers and kind of melt those plastic treads together. So it's kind of like welding with plastic, but they're so thin that if you touch the tread too much with the soldering iron, you go right through. And you can see I got a little kind of junky spot there where it burned through a little bit, but I was so invested in I was already too far in using these specific pieces that I didn't bother redoing it. Our build is starting to take shape, And if these panels were actually stuck onto the car like this, well, they would fall right off, wouldn't they? The doors would open. So we need to add some weld lines. Started by adding a groove. I don't think that was necessary. And taking some of this Tamiya epoxy putty. I think it's like Milliput or green stuff, but I've never used any of those other products, so I can't say for sure. It was a pain to work with. It kept sticking to the tools more than the car. And I needed a way of mounting those armored sides onto the car. I'll use some of this H-bar styrene. And that's looking pretty good. But we still got this big ugly bottom to cover up. So remember, this was a convertible, and there were no A-pillars, so I needed to construct those from something, and I chose to go the styrene route. They might not be the most durable, but this car isn't going anywhere. It'll basically just sit on a shelf. I'm not too worried about that. And here I'm making a little armored plate for the underside of this vehicle. Just slap something together really quick with styrene. Couple of strips for visual interest. Sand in some weathered grooves, battle damage. That's looking pretty sweet. Next I need to fill these wheel wells with something. It's pretty open. If you look, you can see straight through from one side to the other. I need to at least make the illusion that there's an engine and other components inside of this car. So that's what I did, and I ended up with this. My craft room's been warming up recently, so I can actually start using my 3D printer. And I printed these teeny tiny skulls. Popped them in place right in front of the radiator. Thought they looked pretty cool. Intimidating if you see this thing barreling towards you. And I thought the car needed a rear bumper. So I constructed one real quick with some styrene. So then I was thinking about the exhaust, and I took this 3mm brass tube and I put a chamfer on the inside with a larger drill bit, and then I got up from the table. You'll have to excuse me, I was getting a little bored. Ah, there it is. For the exhaust, I'm going with a single pipe coming out near the hood of the car. Squeezing out way too much super glue all over the thing. But there it is, all built. Everything at this stage is still just tacked together with some poster tack, so I can prime it all and paint it all in sub-assemblies, but oh man, this thing is looking so cool. Can't wait to prime it and ruin it with some paint. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now that we're all primed up, I'd like to pick some colors, and I do like to use blue. The color, the name of this paint is bright blue, and I never really understood that. It's not very bright. Long-time viewers of the channel will know that I'm painting most of the chassis and wheels with burnt iron. And to kind of knock down that gloss blue on the base, I'm taking a slightly lighter blue and dry brushing over top. Gives it a more matte finish, and it also gives it a bit more visual interest. Painting the interior, the only proper interior color. detailing out the inside a bit, and then making a mistake on the Mustang color. My idea was to just use whatever color I thought the original cars would have been, and then they were just kind of slapped together. And the first color I thought of for the Corvette was blue, and the first color I thought of for the Mustang was yellow, but this yellow turned out way too yellow, and it started looking kind of silly. So what I did was I took some of this yellow ochre and just watered it down a bit and went over the whole thing, even those weld lines, just to mute out that yellow a bit, knock it down, give it a more believable color. Then I took some gray and some beige to do a little bit more dry brushing. A faded paint effect. There we go. Could be dust, could be faded paint. The treads, of course, are going to be black. I mixed a little bit of blue and then a little bit of burnt sienna, just to give an off black color, like a brownish gray, a really dark brownish gray. It doesn't really come across on screen. I actually, for the first time in a long time, picked up a new paint color. This is a red-brown matte. Black wash still going strong after a year and a half. I got some red, some orange, some burnt sienna. Got this really gross yellow ochre color. And I'm using a combination of all of these to dot on some rust, wash it around, wipe it off. This is one of the most fun stages of the build for me, is the weathering. And I hit some of the details like the vents in the front with black wash, the panel lines. Put some soot on that exhaust, and then it was time to rust up these weld lines. So I started with a black wash, blotted on some of those rust colors, and went to town on streaking. You know, streaking the paint. Coming out pretty sweet. Now that everything's painted, gotta add my crushed pastel dust. I think it's coming out alright. Of course, we gotta go with the clear red on the tail lights, almost forgot. I always use a gloss silver base coat for the tail lights, usually headlights as well, and then I'll put on clear red paint over top. And then it was time to assemble. Everything went together really smoothly for assembly, and yeah, man, this build came out really cool. I'm not gonna lie, it had to grow on me for a while. The colors, I think the initial yellow really kind of shook my opinion of this build at the beginning, but that roof line there, the single exhaust coming out the front, the skulls, the treads, yeah, I mean, this thing came out looking really mean. I will say, unfortunately, I haven't quite figured out how to use this tank tread idea. The paint does not want to stick. You can see here if I just flick it with my finger, it's starting to flake off. So this is not going to be a durable solution at all. Kind of disappointing. I'm wondering if you could preempt that by hitting it with a heat gun, kind of annealing the plastic to take paint and primer better. But as it is, like I said, it's just going to sit on a shelf, but unfortunately that is not a durable option if you're playing a game with it like Gaslands. Be sure to experiment with this though. If you are so inclined to try, experiment with getting good paint adhesion or different ways of gluing it to itself. I would love to hear if you have any solutions. Comment down below, let me know. If you do something, man, shoot me a link on Instagram or Facebook. You can catch me at the Gaslands UK Facebook group. This has been another really fun build. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to my subscribers, you guys are awesome. Have a good one, guys. Go out and make something, and I'll see you on the next build.